Well, good morning. I'll call our August meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. The chairman's missed a few meetings and he's glad to be back, so I may need help on all of this, but Barney said he'd help me. So anyway, I'll call the meeting to order. First item we have is election of officers.
I'd like to move that Chris Kaufman be elected as the chairman of the trust for the coming year.
I'll second that.
Are we going to get buttons up here? Okay, Mr. Chairman, we can do a voice vote if you're, if you want to call the roll.
Okay, let's do a voice vote till they get this hooked up. So we'll start down here. Did we have a second?
Second.
Oh,
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right. And Vice Chairman?
I'd like to make a motion that Barney Sempner be selected as the vice chair of our trust for the coming year.
Second. All right. We'll have another voice vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Well, Barney, congratulations. We'll see if we can get this right someday. Okay. Do we have any residents or any citizens or residents to be heard? If not, I would have approval of our minutes of our July 2nd board meeting unless any of the trustees have any changes or additions.
One change.
Okay.
I think I was missing from the attendees of the minutes. I did attend, and as shown in the votes, just not listed in the trustees on the front of the minutes.
I couldn't understand what you said.
He was not listed.
Oh,
He's saying he was not listed as a trustee attending on the front of the minutes, but he is reflected in the votes, so
Kay Bickham was here.
Kay Bickham was not here.
She's on that
So
list.
that should also be amended, that Kay Bickham
And David Greenwell.
That's probably what happened, is
and Kay
the old
Bickham
list.
and David Greenwell should be removed from the minutes on the cover sheet. And I would move approval of the minutes as amended.
Second.
all in favor? We'll take a voice.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Our consent docket, there are 5 items on the consent docket. Any of the items the trustees would like mention of, or Jason, any you'd like to make a comment on?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of those are pretty straightforward. You'll notice that most of those too are items we bring to the trust once a year.
Then I'd have a motion to approve our consent docket.
Move approval.
Second. Aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay, items for individual consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Who made the motion on that? We're trying to make sure we record it properly.
Barney.
Okay, Trustee Sempner.
Okay, our consent docket, item A, is a resolution ratifying the administrator's approval of an agreement with Trapeze Software for the coming year, I guess. Any comments, Jason?
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments to explain this item, and then also, Mr. Chairman, if you'll notice in the rest of the individual items, most of them are related to, actually I think the remainder are related to parking, and so Corey Hubert's prepared to talk through the rest of the individual items. But yeah, starting with item A, so this is a resolution doing a couple things. One, it's ratifying the administrator's approval of the sole source agreement that is in your packet with Trapeze Software. And that agreement is actually retroactive, as indicated, to March 1st, 2020, and then that'll take us through December 31st of 2022. So I thought it might help the trust or be a benefit to the trust to explain a little bit about why the contract is retroactive for such an extended period. And the short of it is we've actually been negotiating with Trapeze over the last year. As you know, Trapeze, they actually are our vendor or our provider, if you would, of essentially almost all the software services that we use to manage our transit system, both on the bus side and on the streetcar side of our operations. So I certainly didn't want it to look like staff was not engaged or not aware the contract had expired. It's just simply a matter of taking a considerable amount of time to negotiate that contract. Several staff members were involved. Haley assisted us a great deal, and so we appreciate that. So with all that said, you can look on your memo here, and we've got a total estimated cost of this agreement of $150,657 and some change there. And then that's broke out so you can see that being retroactive back to March of 2020 and then taking that time period through December 31st, that cost is just over $28,000. For the 2021 calendar year, if you will, we're estimating a cost of $59,000, and then for the 2022 calendar year, an estimated cost of $62,000. And I think the most helpful piece of the agreement is on page 23. And on page 23 of the agreement, that's where you can find a table that will actually list the various software packages, if you will, along with the annual maintenance agreement cost that we've negotiated, and then the number of vehicles that technology covers. And so anyway, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by any of the trustees? Then I'd have a motion to approve item A.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. Pam?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. All right. Item B is parking rate agreement, and I guess, all the next items with parking, I guess they are, so, all right, Corey.
This is kind of the parking item
Parking
agenda
item.
for some reason.
The parking
This,
report,
yeah.
under reports.
Couple unique agreements. Good morning, everyone. The first one is an agreement with Porsche Club. They're a private organization that intend to have a private conference here in Oklahoma City in July of 2025. Their intent was to lock in parking rates for 400 or so vehicles, as they're protective of their vehicles and they want them out of the elements. OKCCVB believes that over the 9 days, there'll be an estimate of 2.5 to 3 million direct spending in the local economy, which is one of the reasons that we felt justified in bringing this to the trust. Is, to the best of our knowledge, it's never been done before, locking in a price so far in advance. COPPA estimated revenues are anticipated to be $20,000 over this single source event.
All right.
I'll make the motion for approval.
Second. Aye.
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 Motion passes. Motion passes. Item C has to do with the Myriad Gardens and parking.
As many of you may know or may not know, December of 2020, City Council entered into an agreement with Prairie Surf Media to lease out what we used to know as Cox Center for productions of TV, movie, and other things. Sound, security, and vibrations all have a major impact to productions. First, the sound and vibrations of the garage do bleed up into the space above where they intend to do the productions. As such, we've been asked to eliminate transient parking, reduce monthly parking to the Thunder, the basketball club, excuse me, ASM, and the Prairie Surf only will be our monthly parkers. We will offer monthly parking to the 30-some other customers, vehicles or customers in our other assets. We will also maintain our relationship with offering event parking for all 75 events that take place under the Thunder in the arena, concerts and Thunder basketball games. The agreement also allows for CAPA to spend $56,000 to modify the current parking access revenue control system to control currently installed automatic roll up and down gates. This addresses a huge security concern of Prairie Surf in the aspects that it will keep individuals out of the parking area as the talent and crews involved in these productions need to remain. Estimated revenue from the Prairie Surf Media rental monthly fees for parking is estimated at $170,000 a year.
Corey? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Questions?
So what is the impact on this for the previous revenues that we've incurred for those timeframes?
Well, I mean, we maintain our current event parking, we maintain our current monthly occupancy. We lose 30 to gain almost 100. In my budget, I estimated that Prairie Surf would fill the garage with monthlies at 150 users per month on average. They're holding aside 650 for full productions. So I was a little conservative on our estimates, as you can see, as they're a new business. And we'll maintain our event. It is a positive revenue.
Corey, is it true that it does, though, is offset by additional $60,000 in security costs that are borne by us or borne by Prairie Surf?
They'll be borne by us unless they break the agreement within the first 5 years. If they break the agreement in the first 5 years, they're required to reimburse us.
So the net's 170 in estimated revenue less the 60.
Yes.
Yes,
With
okay.
with the 60 being a one-time upgrade.
Okay, just a one time, okay.
All right. Any other questions? It's not right. Any other? All right. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
You get to see a motion now.
Okay. What am I looking at then?
So, see, I've moved.
Okay. How do you vote? A second. Okay. Meg seconded.
Where is that at? I'm not seeing it on my screen. It's not on my screen.
I'm having difficulty signing in, but I am not having difficulty sounding like I'm speaking on the most powerful thing I've ever heard. So anyway, but I would vote yes, please.
So my voting screen is up. Is everybody else?
No,
No.
doesn't,
No.
no. Well, let's just have a voice vote then. James is here. Are you ready to vote?
He voted yes.
You voted yes, okay. Meg?
Aye, yeah.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Yes.
All right, motion passes. Corey, item D, the agreement with Drop Bike.
All right, switching gears from four-wheeled vehicles to two. We have some grant funds available to us. Total cost for this bike expansion to our Spokies will be $120,000. ODOT will cover $90,000, we'll cover $30,000 of the cost. Entering into a relationship with Drop will allow us to expand our bike fleet by 52 vehicles that are electric-powered assist bicycles. In this agreement, it also includes upgrade kits for all of our existing 62 bicycles. These bicycles will not become electric assist bicycles. They will merely become smart bikes, which will allow us to, following procurement rules, get rid of the 8 existing bike racks and start using the estimated 130 plus bike racks that we see on every city sidewalk to chain up the bikes. Our bike fleet would go from 82 to 112 bicycles. I'm sorry, I said 82. We don't have 82. 62 to 112. Sorry about that. There is a revenue split in this agreement that was not listed in the memo. The annual cost, including that split for the drop bikes, would be just under $34,000 for a fleet of 112 vehicles. And then that equates to just over $304 per bike per year.
So that's less than we would have been paying, had we stayed with our current or our previous provider.
We had two respondents, Drop and B-Cycle. B-Cycle's costs would have been about $4,500 above that to service 85 vehicles per year.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of questions. This participation by by ODOT is a one-time payment?
One time.
Okay. So that's for essentially the upgrade and the acquisition of the new bicycles?
Yes.
Okay. I'm really excited about this. At my age, electric assist is the way to go here, so that's great.
It is keeping up with current trends
Right,
in the
and I think
bicycle
it's
world.
keeping up with our market and the interest in our bikes too, so that's great.
Will you be the first one to ride one?
You know, I rode when we first introduced Spokies, I rode a bike that day, and so I haven't ridden a bike since that day, so you may not want me to be on that, but I wouldn't mind doing it. I will volunteer Steve Hill, who owns his own electric assist bicycle, so.
All right, any other questions? And I'd have a motion.
I have one question. Do we have a general timeline on when the e-bikes arrive or when the upgrades are going to commence? Or I know parts are probably hard to get by because of COVID, but.
No, very fair question. We believe, the global shipping market is experiencing difficulties. We believe we'll have all of the hardware and software on city property before the end of the calendar year. That being said, there's not much interest in riding a bicycle in January in Oklahoma City. So it's likely there'll be very late winter, early fall. We want to get everything updated. We're going to have to do some branding on these bicycles, along with taking a second look at our current fleet and if that branding can just be copied and married over, or should we rethink things? Because plain and simple, it's Oklahoma City, and some of those stickers have been around for 5-6 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got it.
I just wanted to say thanks to Josh for giving me an opportunity to test ride one of these around the City Hall campus. And it was a different experience 'cause I'm really used to using my bike, and so I kept being ready for that moment where I just tap the pedal too hard and then I'm off into the Oklahoma River or something. But instead, I found it to be a very pleasant ride, and I just wanted to say thank you again for Josh's time that day. So, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Then we have a motion and a second.
While we have a pause here, I just want to mention that PrimeGov had an update last night, and it is obviously behaving badly. So I know our IT is working on it. I received an email from them, but I just want to say that this is not the staff who's messed this up. I wanted to give you ladies some credit here. So.
Okay, has everybody voted? How do you? No.
Oh, where did it go?
I don't know. All right. Its motion passes unanimously. So item E is a lease agreement with OK Jackalope to relocate their retail to the Santa Fe station. This is kind of exciting to get a new tenant in there.
Yes, now wearing my landlord hat. Jackalope, we all know Jackalope. They've been in Bricktown for years selling Oklahoma-made retail goods. We also know them as a current tenant of ours, Pink Hitzel. OK Jackalope is the parent company of Pink Hitzel. They reached out to us. They want to move into next door, directly next door to their Pink Hitzel place, and start selling their Oklahoma-made goods. Estimate our annual revenue will be $42,000 per year for the first 5 years. We would allow them to move in on September 1st. However, their rent would start 1 month later so that they could move in. I'm sorry, misspoke. Their rent would start on September 1st. They would be allowed to move in as soon as this agreement is accepted. It's the last truly rentable retail space that we have at 3,190 square feet.
Being a retail establishment, is there adequate parking at all times there for?
There's approximately, I'd say about 8 or 9 parking spaces that service those 2 retail establishments, and in no way am I allowed to go out there and charge money for parking.
No, but are these spaces identified for these retail establishments?
There's additional parking, excuse me, just directly south of the Santa Fe and a surface lot that we do charge for parking there, but so plenty of parking, it's just not all free.
All right. Any other questions? Then I'd have a motion. Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. And our last item on the individual consideration is a professional service agreement to manage the surface parking lot.
Justin's going to pull up a map so we all know where this facility is. It's up in Midtown. It's off of Northwest 11th Street and Walker, just east of Cafe do Brasil. Property owner reached out to us a couple of months ago. Due to high volume of business in the Midtown area, they're having individuals park in their parking spaces that are not visiting their establishments. They asked for consultation on how we could improve this. We came up with an idea of installing 2 parking meters and branding it COPPA, or Embark product, as was noted, as was a serious recommendation in our parking study that was completed by Kimley Horn in very early 2020. We will brand it as COPPA or Embark. We'll put our pay-by-plate 2 meters on there. We'll own all signage and license plates. I'm sorry, all signage and parking equipment and be responsible for that. The property owner will maintain our hourly expenses and our service costs for the cellular connections and software dealing with this equipment. As a reimbursable, COPPA will receive a net of 25% of net revenues monthly on this agreement.
And can you remind us how much we're estimating our annual
We're
revenue to be?
estimating $50,000 a year in net revenue for us.
And this arrangement for some of the trustees, you'll remember when we used to have a partnership to manage some of the surface lots over in the courts facility. And at that time, I believe the agreement might have been with the OCPPA, but anyway, nonetheless, it was a split of net revenues after all expenses. And so it's really just that kind of that same approach with a negotiated, split there. And I know Corey said it, but just take an opportunity to just remind the board that, again, this is this is a recommendation that came out of that downtown parking study where our consultants basically said, Oklahoma City, there's a ton of surface parking. It's just that it's tied up by essentially the private sector for tenants that work downtown. How can the city or the trust leverage that parking to make it available when it's not being used by the businesses or the people that are working downtown? And so I think this is just a great step in that direction to where we'll be able to actually make this parking available in the evenings, on the weekends, with the right type of management, even throughout the day to make sure the businesses aren't impacted negatively. So again, just keeping consistent with those recommendations, and hopefully it's a step towards more of this, and if it's the desire of the trust and it works out.
Well, it definitely sounds like a win-win kind of situation.
Sure.
Then we'll have a motion. Been moved and seconded. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, Corey. Next item is ratification of claims and payroll for the period July 7th through July 27th. Any comments by any of the trustees or Jason on that? If not, I'd have a motion to ratify. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, our financial reports for budget to actual for the month ended June 30th. Jason, any comments on any of those particular reports?
Yes, I'd like to make some comments on each one of them, if that's okay. I'll keep them real brief, but with this being the basically the budget to actual for the end of the fiscal year, right? 12 months into June 30th. I thought I might recap some of the, I guess, highlights, if you will, or the takeaways from the financials. And so if we could start on page 2, this is our transportation operations. I know we look at this one each month. And I wanted to point out a couple of things. One is if I could direct your attention to the very bottom line, if you will, of the statement where you have our operating loss or operating income. You'll notice basically our expenses, our operating expenses exceeded our operating revenues by about $949,000 in the last fiscal year as reflected on this report. However, I wanted to make sure that I pointed out footnote 3 and advise the trust, and I know you guys are already aware of this, but we basically, what we did is the last CARES draw that we had for the fiscal year, we ended up directing that to our capital reserves rather than putting it back into our operating budget. And so the shortfall, if you will, that you see on the CARES reimbursement of $828,000, we just have that in reserves right now. So we did draw those funds.
How much do we have in reserves now?
Well, right.
On capital
yeah,
reserves?
Well, based on this, okay. So in our total reserves, we're going to have roughly 10 million. And I say roughly because even the numbers that are on this report have changed a bit since, as the year is being closed. But one of the things I also wanted to mention is that we have a Parking and Finance Committee meeting coming up, and we plan to do kind of an annual review, if you will, like we try to do, of all of our reserve funds for the benefit of the trust. But I'm happy to get that exact number. I can provide that to the trustees. We've had several recent bus purchases, and so depending on where we're at and the timing of those reimbursements, you'll probably see a little bit of fluctuation on our capital reserves.
And I asked Jason yesterday this same question about that. Was this a correct way to handle the CARES funds? Because I know there's, stipulation in that of what you can spend it on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the thing with the federal grants is, we have to have qualified expenses, and they're always on a reimbursement basis, right? So we spent the money up front, and the expenses were a qualified expense, if you will, and then we're reimbursed for them. So as we're reimbursed, right, we put them right back into our operations, or we put them into our reserves. With this being the last month of the fiscal year, knowing we were going into a new fiscal year where we'd have a new federal grant, we have new general fund support coming to the trust, we just simply made a decision to go ahead and put it over in reserves, because let's face it, the pandemic, as we know it, is not over yet. Hopefully, we won't need that for additional PPE or equipment, but we don't know. So we're just trying to be, I guess, conservative, if you would. And if we have the flexibility and we have the cash flow to put that back in case we need it for some unknown expense in this next year, that's what we're recommending we do. But obviously, at the desire of the trust, we can move that back.
All right.
So with that, and I appreciate the question. So with that, the other item I would mention to you that would cause that variance where revenues are less than expenses is really just our typical federal grant reimbursement. You can see we finished the year $266,000 less than what we had budgeted. Now that is just due to the timing of our grant draw. We've basically exhausted the current grant that we were drawing on for preventative maintenance. We exhausted that at the end of the fiscal year. We have application into the FTA. Our next grant, our next formula grant, is being reviewed. It has not been awarded yet. And quite frankly, we've had that in the queue for a while now. So realistically, it could be September's financial before we start seeing those draws or those reimbursements resume. So we'll certainly keep you posted.
Is there any concern that we won't get that approved?
No.
Okay.
It's our regular 5307 formula grant that comes to the urbanized area. We've been in contact with the FTA. It's really just a matter of, them processing the grants as fast as they can, but we're in line.
Jason, would you remind us the timeline in terms of our budgeting where we've taken the CARES Act and we're looking at at least a few years out, I recall, in terms of kind of mitigating where the city's general fund budget contributions are. Could you remind me? A lot's
Yeah.
happened since.
Yeah, just, so generally speaking, we were awarded the CARES at the end of FY '20, and we programmed some CARES funding there at the end of FY '20. I believe it was around, I'm trying to remember if it was, I just don't have it in front of me, if it was 7 or 9 million, but we programmed a significant amount of CARES funding in FY '20, and the general fund subsidy was reduced by that same amount. And we really kind of carried that over to FY '22 as well. So for all intents and purposes, this current fiscal year that we're in, we anticipate spending the majority, I mean, most, like there may be, let's say $1.5 million to 2 left over, but most of it will be expended this fiscal year. Or I should say the remaining balance will be expended this fiscal year.
And then the American Recovery Act is, I can't recall.
Yeah, we also were designated about $7 million of ARP funds, or American Recovery. We have applied for that grant. That's another one that is in process with the FTA. And there is a chance we may end up drawing on some of that this year as well, just so that we don't lose those grant funds and we can put them towards where our resources are needed for services.
Thank you.
But we'll update the trust if we determine to do that, of course. Okay. All right, so looking on the next page, this is our Norman operations. And I just wanted, we don't talk about this every month, but one of the commitments I know that the trust has made and staff has made to the trust is to make sure our agreement with Norman is full cost recovery, plus some additional administrative overhead to cover our admin costs. So really just directing your attention to the bottom line here, the operating loss or income, you can see that total revenues exceeded our total expenses by $82,000. And then I'll also direct your attention to the actuals column where you see the interfund transfers listed under expenditures. That $252,000 that was transferred is basically that admin markup, if you will. So that's helping us recover the cost for our administrative efforts that go into supporting that service. And that's transferred directly back to our Transportation Operations Fund, if you will. On the next page, we have a look at our parking operations and how we ended the 12 months, June 30th. You can see total revenues were 3.1, total expenditures just close to 3.1, left us with an operating income of $74,000. Keep in mind, as we looked at our parking operations about halfway through the year, we brought a budget amendment back to the trust, right? Because our revenues just were not hitting our projections, primarily because of the lack of events and the fact that transient parking was down so much. However, the end of the fiscal year, we really gained some ground. And you can see we finished, if I direct your attention back up to the revenues, we finished $300,000 more in transient revenue and $53,000 more in event revenue than that revised, reduced budget. The other thing I wanted to point out is we had anticipated we budgeted $438,000 of reserves, with the idea if our revenues continued to come in like they were, we would need those reserves to support operations and debt service. And I am pleased to report you can see we used very little of those reserves that we had budgeted. So essentially the parking system, if you will, basically broke even last year after paying for debt service. So And then looking at the next page, this is our river cruise operations. Again, we haven't talked about this on a monthly basis. There's been very little activity this fiscal year, but again, to give the trust an idea of how we finished up. On this budget to actual, you'll see that expenses exceeded revenues by about $59,000. Our revenue does not include a reimbursement of approximately $50,000 that we're anticipating from HMS, or can't remember their new name, City Experiences. So once that revenue is received, it'll reduce that operating loss, if you will, to just around $9,000. Looking at Spokies.
Back to the river, didn't we renegotiate our fee to the operator this past year? Or is that?
Yes, we did, and you can see, well, we don't have the previous year's budget on here, but yeah, we reduced the overall budget from, I believe it was close to $900,000 down to what you see here of about $360,000. And I mean, our typical river budget is, around $900,000. So, and then the next page here is Spokies, and again, won't spend a whole lot of time on this, other than to point out that, we restored Spokies about halfway through the year, and we did that without, any additional general fund subsidy. We were simply looking at some of our operating reserves to fund any gap that we might have. And so you can see on the revenues, we actually budgeted a transfer from operating reserves of about $128,000. Because expenses were so low, and I know Corey recognized Josh earlier, but Josh, who manages our Spokies fleet on the ground, if you will, between him and Corey and others that were involved, we really managed our expenses. So you can see our total expenses for the year were only about $48,000. So we took basically minimal amounts of that operating reserve that we had initially budgeted. So you'll see an operating loss, if you will, of $3,200, but that's simply because we purposefully spent whatever fund balance we had, which was $3,200, and then only took enough reserves basically to cover our expenses. So again, just trying to minimize any use of reserves for operations. And then finally, and I appreciate your patience, but finally, looking at streetcar operations into June 30th, 2021, I'll just direct your attention to the operating loss or income line here. This is showing that our revenues exceeded our expenses by $474,000. Again, if you look at footnote 3, we have a timing issue where the expenses reflect all of our invoices paid to Herzog, our contracted transportation provider, through May. Unrecorded expenses of $298,000 for operations and $140,000 for parts and supplies. That would actually pull our surplus, if you will, down to about $36,000. So we ended up finishing basically about within budget and revenues on streetcar. And that concludes my my comments. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions on our financials? If not, I'd have a motion to receive. It's been moved and seconded. And unanimously passed. Thank you. All right, it looks like we have 3 program reports. First one, Community Engagement and Customer Relations Program Report.
Good morning.
Morning.
The last update that I gave you all was back in April, so this will be everything from April till now. Does somebody have the presentation? There you go. Okay, so we're doing the comprehensive operational analysis with Nelson Nygaard. It's taking place over the course of this year. So because that's not a very understanding name for that, we're calling it OKC Moves. So we had multiple town hall meetings, basically just engaging the community, telling them what is the purpose of this study and how they could get involved with like the survey and, you know, if they had any input on route suggestions or, you know, if there's like a big employer that had moved in somewhere, things like that. So we were getting feedback from them. Next slide. So we had 3 different stakeholder meetings as well. We had one for government, one for social services, and one for businesses in the area. So just depending, you know, like social services was huge. We had, I think, probably 20 people who were attending those. And then we are going to engage these stakeholders again, probably, I would say in like September. So once Nelson Nygaard does their study and their route recommendations, then we're gonna get these people involved again. And then the events that we had the electric vehicle day at the Capitol. We took our electric bus out there, it was fun. We did the PAL Health and Wellness Fair out at like the big soccer fields, which was great. We had the Dodgers mascots come. There were a lot of kids there. We handed out a lot of water bottles, and all the kids loved the buses, so that was fun. And then we also assisted with the Let the Good Times Roll event that Councilperson Hammond put on. So, and Josh also helped with that, so thank you. And then routes continue to change because of streetcar operation for Memorial Marathon, so we always meet up with them and police and just make sure that we're all working together because a lot happens with streetcar, but it also is right around the transit center. We just want to make sure that, you know, scheduling, we can get everything and people can still be moved around, so. And then Festival of the Arts happened in June this year, thank you COVID, and we had the highest streetcar ridership since the pandemic. So these are our ridership numbers here, and the streetcar was complimentary during festival. Thankfully, we're going back to April next year, so we will have complimentary rides in April of 2022, so. And then we also have been doing our monthly BRT stakeholder meetings. They're on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and then these are just some topics that we've been covering. We always ask people what they're hearing in the community, if they have any feedback there. We are giving them brand strategy updates and logo updates, and we should have a logo and all of that done soon. We give bus procurement updates because it's a very long process, so we talk about that. Anytime the BRT is mentioned in the media, we talk about media coverage. And then we're also doing things like crosswalks 101, we'll do one for sidewalks, and just kind of basic like how all of those components fit in with the BRT system and route itself. And then I've had some speaking events too. I spoke to Midwest City Rotary and then gave an update on the BRT to the ACOG and ABTAC group. And then I also gave a presentation, just Embark in general, to the Exchange Rotary group. So we had some Rotary things happening. And then recently, Corey has asked my customer service rep team to help answer the parking meter phone calls. You know, people get into a rush and they're like, oh, this parking meter isn't working. Maybe it is, maybe we just need to slow down a little bit. So my CSRs are now handling the phone calls to help Corey out so he doesn't have to do that. So just helping other people. And then we had another half price sale. These are the numbers of passes that were purchased. This is for the bus side. And then the next is for streetcar and token transit. And then we'll have our next sale in December. So we do those twice a year. And that's all I have. Do y'all have any questions for me?
All right, any questions? Sounds like you were busy this month.
Yeah, it's picking up.
All right.
And I will say, just like on the streetcar side in general, we've had a very busy week. We have a group that's chartering a streetcar. We had a conference that was here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, and they purchased 500 passes for 3 days in a row, so that was a big deal. So, I mean, they're still picking up even though the pandemic is still happening, so.
All right, thank you.
Positive.
I also just wanted to say thank you for your outreach to the different businesses along the upcoming BRT route. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Our transit system report.
Morning.
How's everyone doing? We got almost officially wrapping up summer now, right? Rolling into fall, getting ready for school year to start. Good times, right? All right, so we're going to jump into the transit system report. Easy does it with the roller. All right, so this is our average weekday ridership for our fixed route services. So you can see the comparison for of 2020 compared to 2021. So if you take a look at June, you can see that we've had an increase there. We had a 9.4% increase over last year. Again, you can kind of take a look at the entire layout here, and you can see the dip in April and May of last year with COVID, but then you can see it start to ramp back up, and we're holding steady right around 6,000 riders per day on the fixed route. This is our average daily weeknight ridership. So for routes 5, 11, 13, 22, and 23, you can see the comparison for June of 2020 to 2021, a 53% increase, so going from 190 to 291 average daily ridership at night. And this is our mobility management. Again, this is our our Embark Well, our STEP programs, Conger Mills, Share a Fare, medical trips, and other services. Again, we're continuing to see our ridership increase, especially compared to last year, so a 53% increase compared to this time last year. Embark Plus, so interesting for Embark Plus, so even during COVID, we saw a pretty substantial or a pretty steady ridership across there. Of course, in April and May, a little bit of a dip, but because these are more essentially on-demand requests, right? So we're able to keep that ridership pretty steady. Still saw a 53% increase over last year. And my goodness. All right, there we go. Streetcar ridership. So it's kind of like what Kristen said, this past month we had our largest ridership increase since COVID. So in the month of June, we reached just a little over 26,000 riders for the month of June, the entire month of June. If you remember, back prior to COVID, we were averaging right around 30,000 riders per month. So we're getting close back to our normal average there for streetcar. And then because it is the Corey show today, let's get Corey back up here to talk about Skokies and River. Since he wears all the hats.
Thank you, Jesse. June of 2020 on our river cruise operations, the dredging operations for the May lock was done. The reason for this was the historic floodings in 19. It took about 5 months to clean out that soot. Meridian Landing, after that, we made our first trip to Meridian Landing after we removed some sediment that had washed in while the basin was down. July 21, Embark relaunched its ferry services to the public. Effective Monday, you're seeing our new ferry service schedule, which will focus on the stockyards being as a main hub versus the exchange landing. Thought processes there was there's much more to do outside of the ferry operation at stockyards versus the exchange being mostly a maintenance facility. Devon Discovery was put back into the water a couple of weeks ago. Survey results were well above average, excellent condition or mint condition. The value, the current estimated value is at 1.05 million, which is more than the boat was purchased for. Goes to show what great work Mark and his team does. On July 14th, we had our ribbon cutting ceremony for the stockyard landings. And quite a few people showed up for that. Would like to close this by thanking all the other departments, Public Works, helping us with the construction and build out of the landing, the maintenance of the river, the Parks Department for, again, maintenance, and then, of course, city experiences with all their experience recommendations and running the charters for the past fiscal year. Spokies. Fiscal year 19, showing you the ridership at 10,000. Keep in mind that was pre-scooters. Fiscal year 20, we had the scooters come in and erode some of our ridership. Fiscal year 21, while it appears to be a lot lower than fiscal year 20 in riders, that's true. We only operated for 7 months. An important data point to point out there was in fiscal year 20, we had 474 monthly average riders per month. In fiscal year 21, of those 7 months, we had 713 average riders per month, or I'm sorry, 315 riders per month on average. So we're at 66%. We're still getting out of COVID with the new launch of the new vehicles coming soon. I really expect us to get up to pre-COVID numbers quite quickly. Just to show you what our bike stations could look like, here's an example of what Kansas City did. We have bicycle racks all over the place. We plan on utilizing them the way they are. Another reminder, again, we're going from 8 bicycle stations to over 130 bicycle stations with that. And then here's Josh getting ready to test one of the bikes that you just gave us permission to purchase. Any questions?
All right. All right, thank you. You-
Alrighty. Ready for the BRT?
Okay,
All right, so I'll be giving a quick update on the BRT for this month. Just jump right into it. So, previously we wrapped up the 30% design back in October, did our workshops, continued to develop the design. July, we received our 60% design for the BRT. We submitted that to all the different departments within the city, so Public Works, Utilities, Planning. We gave them an opportunity to review it as well as Embark doing an internal review, Public Works managing that review process. So we've received comments, we provided those comments back to the engineer, and now we're working through those comments to resolution. So between the 60% design and the 95% design, we'll be holding our utility conferences. So that's where we reach out to the public and private utilities. If there's any that need to be relocated, we'll work with them to get those relocated. Any right-of-way acquisition that needs to happen along the alignment, we'll take care of that between the 60 and 95% design. At 95% design, we'll send out those drawings to our peers. So we'll send them out to Tulsa and Kansas City, since they've operated a BRT now for several years, for an opportunity for them to review our drawings and see if there's anything that we might be missing. And then between that 95% design, peer review, and 100% design, we'll be wrapping up, we're finalizing the design, but we'll also be doing a value engineering workshop. So what happens during that value engineering workshop, we take a look at the drawings, the engineering drawings, and see if there's any areas where we can maybe trim back a little bit to make sure that we stay well within the budget. And then we will bring those 100% design drawings back to the board for approval to send out to bidding. And once it goes out to bid, then, this thing is touchy. All right, so then it'll go out to bid. We anticipate receiving those bids back around April or May of 2022, bringing that back to the board for approval, and then issuing a notice to proceed to the general contractor around June of 2022. About a year-long process for construction, wrapping up construction around July of 2023. And then between July of 2023 and the fall of 2023, before we go into revenue service, talked about it several times, we'll be doing our construction, conformance testing, and safety acceptance. That'll also be the time that the FTA Region 6 will come in. They'll do their safety analysis prior to us going into revenue service, similar to like what we did with the streetcar. So they'll be here for a week reviewing all of our safety documents and reviewing the alignment, making sure that it meets criteria. All right, you're gonna have to run it, Justin. Sorry, I'm just too touchy with it. All right, so this is our bus procurement schedule. So like we've talked about before, back in May, we issued that RFP, got it approved. I'll just jump to where we're at right now. I try to save a little bit of time. So, there we go. So proposals were due June 30th, 2021. We received those. So we anticipated bringing the COPTA contract acceptance to this board. However, there were a few things that we wanted to make sure were correct prior to bringing it to the board. So we've pushed that back to the September board date, where we anticipate contract acceptance. Once we issue the notice to proceed to the vendor for the buses, they'll begin construction. We anticipate our first delivery of our first BRT bus here in Oklahoma City around April 6th of 2022. And then between April 6th and February 6th, we'll be receiving the remainder of those buses, the remaining 8 buses. All right, so now I'm going to jump into essentially do a quick overview of the 60% drawings. I'll move pretty quickly, so if anybody has any questions, please stop me. I know we're trying to make a time deadline here. So this is a rendering of our standard station. I anticipate during a future presentation coming back and giving a full in-depth presentation of all the amenities along the station, so I don't want to focus too much here. But just real quick, so you can see that the standard station has 1 shelter, the high-capacity station has 2 shelters, essentially 2 shelters, the size of 2 shelters. Now we're going to jump into the engineering drawings. So help you get oriented, right? So in the bottom left of every slide is the north arrow. The bottom right of every slide is a key map. So we are starting at the far northwest endpoint of our alignment, the end of the line. So at Northwest Expressway and Meridian. So if you remember, Northwest Expressway and Meridian has a large asphalt parking lot that's there. We're anticipating using that as one of our park and ride locations and building a high-capacity BRT station at that location. And we'll be using that diamond-shaped area up there for the roundabout. Moving on, so now we're going to be moving south toward downtown along our alignment. So the next couplet pairing for our BRT stop is at Northwest 63rd and Hudson. So to kind of help you get oriented, so on the southeast corner of that intersection is a 7-Eleven. Our outbound stop is on the top side of the screen, traveling westbound on 63rd. Our inbound stop is traveling eastbound on 63rd, taking us downtown. All right, so here is a zoomed out picture of the intersection Northwest Expressway and Portland. This is just kind of get you oriented for the area. So our outbound stop is at the far northwest corner of that intersection, and our inbound stop is at the southwest corner of that intersection. Again, you'll see some pretty significant pedestrian improvements at this intersection. Again, making it so that people can easily get from one stop to the other, easily crossing the intersection here at Northwest Expressway. So now we're going to zoom into the stops. So this is our outbound stop. Again, this is on the north side of Northwest Expressway, just west of Portland. So we've got a designated bus-only lane here. So that's an area for the bus to exit out of traffic, because we all know how fast traffic can travel down Expressway. So we want to make sure that our bus is safely out of that traffic. So we've got a bus-only lane here, and then we've got about 300 feet in front of that bus for it to be able to pull back into traffic safely. The next slide here is the intersection at Northwest Expressway in Portland. Again, to help you get oriented, so north is to the left. Again, you can see pretty significant intersection improvements for pedestrians. We'll be adding the audible pedestrian push buttons, improving signals here. James, you know, or Trustee Cooper, we've talked about several times about the pedestrian crosswalks. We want to make sure that anywhere where we're upgrading those crosswalks, where we increase the size of those continental striping like we talked about at last board. So this set doesn't reflect that, but we anticipate the engineers going back and updating that. That's one of our comments. So moving along, so now we're south of Northwest Expressway on Portland. This is our inbound stop, again, taking us back downtown. Moving along. All right, so North Portland and Northwest 56. So help you get oriented. To the left is Deaconess Hospital. To the north, or to the top of the screen, is north. So we'll be taking our inbound and outbound stops here at this intersection. Again, thinking of it as a couplet system, right? So the idea is that it's easy to navigate, so that you use the bus, you come in, you get off at a stop, and you can easily see where your stop to go home is, right? Whether it's directly across the street or maybe just a short walk, you can easily find your stop to get back home. All right, moving along. So now we're at Baptist Hospital in Independence. Again, couplet stop here. We're improving the pedestrian access here, so we're going to be installing the mid-block crossing signage, right? So if you want to cross, you can use the push button. Signage will pop up, lights will flash, and that way you can easily cross the street there. So now we're at Northwest Expressway and Pennsylvania Avenue, right? So Penn Square is top right, Bank of Oklahoma top left. The new Oak development that's going in is on the southwest corner, and then 50 Penn Place is on the southeast corner. All right, and so this is our outbound station. North is up. Penn Square Mall is to the top of the screen. So again, we're on Northwest Expressway, so we want to make sure we have a designated pull-off lane for the buses. So also Public Works is adding an additional lane here as far to get traffic through this intersection, and we'll be adding the bus-only lane. So anticipation of that added lane by Public Works, we're actually adding that to our scope because we don't want to add that bus pull-off lane and then have a void. So we're adding that to our scope and doing that work. So moving on, so this is our inbound station, again, taking us downtown. Oak development is to the bottom. And again, Northwest Expressway, bus pull-off lanes for safety. All right, getting dry mouth and talking fast here. So Northwest Expressway and Penn, this is our intersection. Again, major pedestrian improvements here at this intersection, adding ADA crosswalks, audible signals, and also looking at improving the signalized intersection there. Okay. All right, so again, moving along on Expressway, zoomed out version here, so on cue, Alliance Bank. So this is essentially the Belle Isle highway turn, right, where all the traffic goes to Penn Square Mall. So we're going to have our inbound station to the east of Blackwelder on Northwest Expressway, and our outbound station to the northwest there, west of Blackwelder on the north side of Expressway. This is a zoomed-in version. Again, Expressway, pull-off lanes. Try to speed through this a little bit. So Blackwelder, improved pedestrian access, and then our inbound station on the south side of the Expressway with Putnam Heights neighborhood just to the south of there for easy access. All right, Classen Boulevard and Northwest 42nd Street. So significant improvements here. So we're doing a mid-block crossing. This is going to the Traffic Commission for approval because there is a New View resource there just to the west. So again, north is to the left side of the screen. This bottom side of the sheet there is New View, so we want to make sure that we did major improvements here for this mid-block crossing because you will have visually impaired customers that are crossing Classen, right? And so we want to make sure that it's super safe. So we've done this mid-block crossing. This will be similar to like the mid-block crossing on 23rd Street, so heavily signalized. It completely stops all traffic so that pedestrians can easily cross this Classen Boulevard here. And then we've got the outbound station, outbound station north of 42nd Street, where we're going to be doing some improvements to the driveways there for access to that parking lot. Okay. This is 36th and Classen. Again, designed it as a couplet. Got far side stop here on the north side of 36th Street on Classen. Far side stop for our inbound stop on the south side of 36th Street on Classen. And this is 30th and Classen, Northwest 30th and Classen. So we've continued our outreach with the property owners at this intersection, working through, trying to get everybody on board. So we've got our outbound station here on the south side of 30th and our inbound station on the south side of 30th. Help you get a little oriented. So at the top of the screen on the outbound station is the pho restaurant. And then on the south or on the bottom side of the screen is the new Spin City laundromat that's going in that's currently being constructed. So if you drive by, you'll see the framing going up. All right, next slide. So this is, again, zoomed out. This is Northwest 23rd and Classen, north being to the top. So at the southwest corner there, you've got Walgreens. Southeast corner, you've got the Gold Dome. Northeast corner, you've got CVS, and then you've got a little bit of that retail strip on the northwest corner of that intersection. Our inbound station is south of 23rd Street, so a far side stop. And our outbound station is on the north side of 23rd Street, a far side stop. Okay. So our outbound station, again, significant pedestrian improvements here at this intersection. We're actually going in and doing some asphalt work here at this intersection too, because if anybody's been at 23rd Street, the asphalt is rippled, right? And so we want to make sure that we make it safe for anyone in a mobility device, easy to walk across there, make it safe for people to get across that intersection. And also significant ADA improvements here with audible pedestrian push buttons and things like that. Outbound station at the northeast corner there. Okay. And then our Walgreens southbound, our inbound station just south of 23rd Street. Again, this is one of our high capacity stations because working with the COA, we anticipate a lot of transfers, right? Because 23 is one of our busiest routes, and we anticipate that to continue. So we want to make sure that we made sure that people can make connections here at these intersections. Okay? All right, North Classen and Northwest 17th and 18th, so Homeland is at the southeast corner there at 18th, and Brahms is off to the southwest corner there at 17th and Classen. We'll go to the next one there. This is our outbound station at Homeland, so making sure that we have that access to grocery stores, right? So that's the whole idea of transit, making sure that customers can get to where they need to go. So we're making sure that we have a stop here at this Homeland, also near the residential neighborhoods there. And then our inbound station here is essentially in this island, and so we're also doing pedestrian improvements there to make sure that you can safely get from this island to the nearest sidewalk, and then also be able to get to your closest Brahms to get your ice cream. Anybody prefers a mix? That's me, Butterfinger, and Reese's. All right, move on to the next one. So this is at 13th Street and Classen, so you've got your future on queue here at the southwest corner. We're doing significant improvements here. We're also adding bike lanes, right? So we've talked about this before. So we're adding bike lanes from 10th all the way up to 16th Street. This is to reflect that. So we're going to have separated bike lanes. So there's going to be a little area of separation there. And then our bike lanes with all of the appropriate striping and painting. So we're doing similar to like we did with our streetcar stops. So we're having our bike lanes go behind the stations, right? To get away from that interference where if a bus is there, a cyclist doesn't have to go out into traffic. They can safely travel behind the station and continue on along their path. Okay? So this is at St. Anthony Hospital. This is on 10th Street. So we've, again, getting our customers where they need to go, right? We have a lot of customers that need to be able to get to hospitals for checkups and get to their doctor's appointments. So we made sure we had a stop here. Our inbound stop is on the south side of 10th Street. Our outbound stop is on the north side of 10th Street. We're also doing some pedestrian improvements here. There's already pretty good pedestrian crosswalks here, but we're making sure that those are upgraded. Okay? And then, because everybody loves coffee, we have a stop here at Elemental Coffee. Now, we've got a stop here just south of Northwest 8th Street on Hudson. This is leading toward our transit center, going southbound on Hudson. And now we've arrived at our transit center. So we have an inbound and outbound stop at our transit center. Again, thinking about those connections, right? So our entire system, majority of our system goes to the transit center, and we want to make sure that we are able to provide those connections to be able to get people to where they need to go, or get our customers where they needed to go. Okay? And then we're getting close to the end here. So this is at Robinson and Park. So we'll have a BRT station northbound on Robinson here, with our OKC streetcar stop southbound, which is also shared with a bus, thinking about those connections, right? So you can use the BRT to get downtown. Say the BRT doesn't quite get you to where you need to go when you're downtown, you can easily hop on the streetcar and make that connection. The whole idea of the streetcar is that it's a circulator, right? So now we're making that connection to the circulator with our BRT project. All right, and then finally, we're at our label at the bottom is wrong, so disregard that. We're finally at Broadway Avenue and Main Street, so to help you get oriented, to the north is to the right, Bank First Tower, the large tower that's on the south or the northeast corner there. Bank First Bank is on the northwest corner, the Sheridan Hotel, southwest corner, and then Corey's Century Center parking garage is also there on the southwest corner. So this is another one of our park and ride locations, right? So you can park in the garage, walk across the street, across the intersection, hop on the BRT stop, and go all the way out to the Northwest Expressway and Meridian. Okay, and then the Continental Tower there on the southeast corner of the intersection. And also pedestrian improvements there. Thank you. That is it. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions of Jesse?
Thank you, Jesse, for walking us through the update. Just a really quick question. On the slide that was 23rd and Classen, yes, for the previous one.
Well done. Yeah.
I think it was, would you go one more? That was kind of a closer, yes. Could you talk to us a little bit about this north-west corner, what we're going to see there? Because I've kind of had my eye on just sort of the history of the buildings right there. What kind of improvements are we anticipating?
Yeah, so the northwest corner there, to help you get oriented, that's the little retail strip there. There's also the dance studio. If you haven't been to the dance studio, they do great two-stepping. Anyway, so the northwest corner, yes, we'll be adding ADA ramps and pedestrian improvements. So we'll be adding the audible push buttons to be able to cross. And then we're also making sure that the sidewalks leading up to those ramps are ADA accessible.
Thank you.
You bet.
Does anybody remember what was on the northwest corner? It was a Carnation ice cream shop, I think, originally. So you got to go back a long time to remember that, so. All right, any questions of Jesse? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd have a motion to receive our program reports. Been motions moved and seconded.
I vote yes.
Yeah,
Laura and I are not.
we're dead.
All right, we'll take a voice vote. James?
Yes, please.
Meg?
I,
Robert?
Yes.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. All right, any items from the trustees? Come on, James. Yeah,
No, thank you.
no, I haven't been around for a while now. Have they cleaned your act up or what? All right,
I've given all the speeches I have left to give.
okay.
I'll say something just so everybody knows, because it'll have an impact on hopefully some of the park and rides, but we'll be having another festival at Centennial Park where the Arts Festival was in September, so it should be a big one.
All right. No? I'm getting to you.
Okay.
Jason?
I'll take.
Okay.
I'll take Councilman Cooper's slide here. I've been on this board for quite a while, and the last couple of months have just been amazing. I mean, from Jesse's preferences on dancing and ice cream to Maryland's report of a couple of weeks ago of all the wonderful things they're doing, and then today the new electric assist bike fleet. I mean, this has just been a really good time to be on the COTPA board. So, thanks to everyone who's serving, and thanks to the staff for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I've been on the board 33 years, and it just still becomes amazing what we are accomplishing. So you're right. All right, Jason?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I didn't want to let you down and not have comments
Okay.
today, so, but just real quick, we referred to our COA, I think, several times through the meeting and through the program reports. And I just wanted to remind, particularly anybody that might be listening here, is that is our comprehensive operational analysis. That's a study being conducted by Nelson Nygaard, a transit consultant, and that is a fresh look at our current embarked fixed route bus system. So we get a little technical up here because it's just nature, but wanted to make sure I explained that. The other thing I wanted to mention is with the presentation that you just saw on the 60% plans of the BRT. That was really just intended to be a presentation, an informational item for the trust. We will bring those 60% plans to the trust to receive them, to officially receive them. But hopefully having a little bit of background up front will make that review and that receipt of those a little bit more efficient when we officially present them. And then finally, you all should have received an email, but just as a reminder, we are planning a board workshop for October 7th, and the details of that should have been in your email, but if we'd love to have the full board there if you can get that on your calendar early. And the only commitment promise we have is that you won't be stuck in a room for several hours in a typical workshop setting. We're going to try to change it up a little bit for you, so appreciate that. Thank you.
And I was going to make mention of that workshop, that any of the trustees have any items or concerns, that they get that to staff so they can be prepared come the October workshop on any of those items. So, all right. If there's nothing else, then we're adjourned. Thank you for being here.